I think we'll turn to our last guest, but I think our most important, again, for the day because of his relationship with the Washington Informer and what keeps him awake at night. Sam P.K. Collins, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
Can't complain. Living, learning, and laughing.
Good, good, good. And, I said that because we had a little conversation earlier and we're trying to figure out, what approach we were going to take, because you've written some great stories this week. One about the police, the viral video that went out and with the young man, that in Southeast at 16th U, and then what has happened as a consequence or subsequent to that, with a lot of shootings and what have you. And then the young man that was stabbed, you didn't write about that, but the young man that was stabbed in front of Kip Charter School. And then also just going back to school. And I said a few minutes ago jokingly, but it's probably true. What are the things that keep you awake at night as you begin to kind of formulate the stories that you're going to do, especially for a week like this one?
Very great question, Denise. To tell you the truth, what keeps me up at night is just the people, pretty much, thinking about how to get as close to the truth as possible about what people on the ground are feeling, what readers are feeling, what people in the margins are thinking about as they return to school and as they navigate, their communities that are under violence, pretty much. And I've spent, a couple of weeks really doing that, going to 16th and U and interviewing people who've lived in that community for years, and just having them speak about what they've seen and what they've described as a divestment from their communities. I've also spoken with teachers and parents who are very concerned about the Delta variant of the COVID, and pretty much just concerns around whether it is safe to go back to school. I've spoken with teachers who've also spoken about, to me, what they're doing to prepare for the school year. And, in addition to school, we're also speaking about resources. In the weekend before school starts with DCPS, there are a bevy of events. One of them where coordinators will distribute hundreds of computers, and like, as you recall, last year, during the last school year, during virtual learning, there was a resource gap, that DCPS and the charter schools were always trying to meet. Technology has always been one of the variables, that has really determined how well a student can learn during virtual learning. And, and in speaking about teacher evaluations, a lot of teachers have also criticized, teacher evaluations and not really taking into consideration student absences and just, technological difficulties that might not allow them to do their job. So just really talking to people about a whole gamut of things as it relates to returning to school. But, the question on everybody's mind, Denise, is to what degree are schools ready to let children back in? And, are they really prepared? And vaccinations have come up as a part of that as well.
So what do you think? I mean, you've been out talking to folks, parents, teachers. I believe you were even meeting with the chancellor this week as well.
Yes.
Are the schools prepared for the students to come back and for schools to open?
I think it varies between schools. I had a chance to tour portions of Stanton Elementary last year. I've seen some HVAC installations. I've seen what they call a situation room or a quarantine room where 2 nurses will be stationed, I was told. But, I also hear about other schools, like a school in Ward 7 that hasn't had, a working HVAC system all summer, even as a nonprofit worked there. And, schools and students had summer sessions there. There's another school in Southeast, where they speak about, the difficulties in students keeping on their masks and, and teachers having to share portable air purifiers. So the situation differentiates between schools, but the document that was actually signed yesterday, there's a document called a Memorandum of Understanding, a health and safety memorandum of understanding that is intended to keep the glue together. It's a document, that Chancellor Farabee and WTU President Jackie Poe Lyons, they signed, pretty much dictating what are the rules of engagement as far as it concerns, safely reopening schools, weekly testing, weekly cleanings. What are the protocols that are in place to prevent COVID, to mitigate the spread of COVID when cases are found? All of these are drawn up in the documents. But even with that, and as you will see in my upcoming article, there are concerns among teachers that even that document was not fleshed out enough, that DCPS didn't really do its part in tailoring those safety protocols to what's happening on the ground at DCPS, that rather they just took what the CDC recommended and put it in there just to meet, the satisfactions. And there's even, as you will see in my article, some discontent within the WTU as well, just around, not necessarily accusations, but concerns that teachers' concerns were not really met. So like there's a whole lot going on, and it, like I said, it differs from school to school. And, the main issue that's at hand is how do we hold officials accountable and how do we make sure that safety protocols are followed?
You also did a story not too long ago, Sam, on homeschooling and the growing number of parents who are opting to homeschool their children. Can you
Yes.
talk a little bit about that?
So that was a very awesome article. And I had the opportunity to speak with a couple of parents in the DC area, DC specifically, who, have been homeschooling pretty much throughout the duration of their children's lives. As you may or may not know, homeschooling doubled over the COVID pandemic. We're at nearly 800 students in the city who are registered as homeschoolers. And that might be a negligible number, in relation to the 100,000 students that are between DC and charter. But for homeschooling to have doubled is a testament to what parents were feeling, because, we're talking about safety concerns, first of all, and we're also talking about discontent with what, children are learning or may not be learning inside the school system. So, with all of that happening, what the State Board of Education was talking about pretty much was how to make sure that students, even those who are homeschooled, are getting the resources that they need. And right now, even though DC has a pretty easy process for you to get homeschooled, there are still some amenities that tax-paying residents cannot have access to when their children are outside of the school system. For example, when you're talking about special education students, there are certain resources that they cannot access if they're homeschooled. You're also talking about resources for literacy that might be housed within schools. You're also talking about extracurricular activities at the high school level. So in this juncture of the homeschool fight, not only are homeschoolers fighting for recognition, even though recognition is very easy to get in DC, they're also fighting for equal access to resources. And there was even a conversation about, the possibility of, forgive me. That's my dog. He's very excited about homeschooling apparently. So
Go ahead.
Forgive me. It's very easy to get recognized as a homeschooler in DC. All you need to do is provide documentation about what you're learning, if you're fitting what's in the curriculum, et cetera, et cetera. But now it's about acquiring resources. And now there's even conversation, even if it's minimal, there's conversation about how parents can take the tax dollars that's invested into the school system to come back to them so that they can be better homeschool parents, and that's happening in different cities. But you see right now, this conversation about catching up when it comes to homeschooling, and it's not ending anytime soon, especially with the Delta variant coming. And, there are predictions about, if and when schools will close again. So homeschooling is a very, very hot topic, and one I was very happy to cover.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did it. And the other thing that we haven't looked at, but maybe you have, with the census numbers that just came out I think it was last week, and the loss of particularly Black residents in the District of Columbia. How have those numbers impacted the number of children enrolled in public and charter schools? Are the numbers the same? Are they higher? Did we lose people because of COVID? What are they saying about the student population this year?
The student population, from what I understand, is So first of all, enrollment, that's a process that has been taking a little bit longer than
Yeah.
usual, just because of COVID and people really struggling to get documentation together. Now, in regards to the population lowering, if I recall correctly, census numbers say about 40% or so of Black people of the population is Black in DC. In terms of enrollment, that has really skewed the numbers in terms of proportion. So if you're looking uptown, and western parts of the city, is more diverse racially and ethnically. More of a white population. You have more of your Latino or Latinx students. The same is the case, on the eastern part of the city. So when you're looking at portions of Ward 7 and Ward 8, even though Ward 8 is a Black population stronghold, there are portions of that have a slowly creeping Latinx population, and that's just because of cost of living. As cost of living increases, people are really moving into the margins, and that's been the case over the last decade. Just people moving all over the city. Right. But in regards to your question, I think what people are seeing more than anything is just kids being scattered all across the city. That has been the issue for the last couple of years. When you're talking about the school lottery and just parents in certain parts of the city being concerned about the quality of education, like where do I put, students, where do I put my child, so to speak. And even with that, you have parents, because of gentrification, with Maryland addresses, with real Maryland addresses, using DC addresses to get into DC schools. And I've talked to people, on background who recalled seeing Maryland license plates pull up to the front of schools, dropping off students. And that's an ongoing issue, that if I recall correctly, OSSI is trying to address. There have been discussions about penalizing parents who break those sort of rules, and all of that.
There was a big story a couple of years ago. I don't remember the outcome, but from students over at Duke Ellington, there's a large number of them that actually parents were fined, and the fines aren't cheap. They're like $25,000.
Exactly. Yes.
So we're almost out of time, and I just wanted to lastly ask, because this whole issue of violence has been really, really tough. And I know that you attended an event the other night with Council Member Trayon White to talk about the issue. Can you just briefly tell us what the outcome was of that meeting?
No problem. The meeting took place at the UPO, Anacostia, on Good Hope to be exact, and it featured a lot of community organization reps, as well as the director of Building Blocks DC, Linda Harley Harper. The outcome of that event, for the most part, is that people are frustrated to an extent of, just what it's come to. This didn't happen overnight. As Councilmember White said, as well as other guests, this was more than a decade in the making of just divestment from the Ward 8 community. Rec centers are closing. People aren't really getting the resources that they need. And it's also an issue of unity, how best to reach those who aren't getting the resources and having them believe that the resources are there for them. Ms. Harper, she spoke to what Building Blocks is trying to do. And at the same time, she acknowledged that, oftentimes there are squabbles between groups, in trying to reach everybody. So, a big hurdle is unity and just empowering people, especially those who are frustrated with the government, really making it so that they're taking things into their own hands. Because even with the resources that the government, says it's giving people, oftentimes that doesn't reach the right people, or the people who are giving out the resources might not be the kindest toward Ward 8 residents. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of frustration last night and a lot of talk about what to do for self. I think that was the theme of last night, what to do for self and how best to get people who are in the margins. And it's an ongoing conversation, but a lot of participation from community groups. I saw some nonprofits in there, Black Lives Matter DC, as well as some government agencies.
Wonderful. Sam, all I can say is keep up the great work. Keep telling those stories, making sure that, folks who feel as though they're voiceless have a voice. And I see that coming through in your articles every week. We're very proud to have you as a member of the Informer staff.
Thank you.
And, you know, we want to make sure that we keep parents abreast of what they need to look forward to during the school year. You are an education writer, if folks didn't recognize that with all of your commentary, and a former school teacher yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Former educator. So if you have any questions, Sam, give us your email address so folks can email you in case they, you know, have some stories or some issues they'd like to follow up with you.
Definitely. Please use it. And you can even abuse it if you want, but not too much. scollins@washingtoninformer.com. That is SCOLLINS @washingtoninformer.com. Please reach out.
All right. Well, you have a great weekend. Stay dry, and we'll see you on the street somewhere, sometime.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Give thanks.
Right. Have a good one. Thank you. All right, so this brings us to the end of our program this week, and you know, we certainly do want to hear from parents and teachers and students, young people yourselves. If you have some issues or concerns that you'd like to share with us, please do so. You can email us here at wintv@washingtoninformer.com. Did I say that right, Shevry? News, use news, NEWS, news @washingtoninformer.com. And Desiree is right there waiting to hear your comments on Facebook, Instagram. Reach out to us. Let us know what's going on in your community. And that's what we do. We're here to serve. So have a great weekend. It looks like the sun is trying to peek out for a minute. You can leave now. Go run your errands. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you this time next week. Thank you.